Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the #1 professional wrestling radio show in Las Vegas. This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Going bell to bell with the best in professional wrestling news, entertainment, and lots of Sin City surprises from inside the squared circle. Now, let's get to all the exciting pro wrestling action and bring on the host. Here is Mark Hoke.
And good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? Welcome. I got to change my background there. I've been screwing around with everything so bad online. But hey, very happy to have you with us on the Mark Hoke Show. The best in pro wrestling news and entertainment here on KDAWN 101.5 FM. It is the talk of Las Vegas. And very happy to have all of you with us today. I have survived Wrestle Connects. I am thrilled to death about that. So that was a good thing, but a great day over there. Boy, I'll tell you what, that I have a blast. I had an absolute blast. Just hanging around and having a good old time with guys like Ted DiBiase, Greg the Hammer, Valentine, so many others. It was an unbelievable day over there at the Tuscany. And very thrilled to have had the chance to hang out with everybody over there at Wrestle Connects. We'll just fix that on the break because I'm trying to do a show and I didn't realize that I'm having a little fun with the live stream. We're changing some stuff up. So if you want to subscribe to the show, we'd appreciate it. Go to YouTube and check out the Mark Hoke Show and, of course, all of our socials too. And I'm very happy first to welcome in my good friend, mi amigo. He's the man, Phil Stamper, everybody. Phil, the president of wrestling at Trust and Phil. What's going on, my friend? Oh, we got him.
That was on me. I was watching you and laughing at you for your little glitch, and then I did the same thing. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Oh, man, I'll tell you what. We're just glitching all over the place. It's crazy. Crazy, I tell you. But
I mean, there was no glitch. I mean, no glitch.
Yeah, well, your mic was muted for a second there, so I had to fix that,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Whatever. Oh, my God, what a day. What a day, I'll tell you what. But, Phil, very happy to have you with us, of course, from the Revolver and MCW and doing all his great indie calendar. It is something else. If you haven't checked out, go ahead to Trust and Phil and take a look at that. And, you'll certainly enjoy getting to know what's going on the indie circuit all over the place. So, Phil, we have a very special guest in the studio today, by the way, as well. That I am thrilled to have along for the ride because everything that's been going on with the fallout from the Swerve Hangman match and the talk of violence in wrestling and so on, I thought, let's bring in somebody who might know just a little bit about violence in wrestling here in Las Vegas. Just a little bit. Because, of course, he hosts the Game Changer Weekly podcast out of Las Vegas. They are the official fan podcast for Game Changer Wrestling. And very happy to have him on the show. Let's welcome in John Wolfe. John, what's up?
Let me do the same thing there. I just wanted to make sure my mute was off also. What a wonderful day here we have so far. Yeah, good morning both to Mark. Phil, this is the first time meeting you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Las Vegas. I'm looking forward to sitting down talking about death match wrestling. This is a wild subject, and it's hit the mainstream much more than in the previous years, at least the last 25. So really looking forward to talking about this today.
Yeah, it has been such an incredible topic of discussion after what happened with Swerve and Hangman. Plus, it's been AEW's been kind of stepping up on the blood and color is it's known in the business too. But and of course we had Swerve and Hangman getting bounced off of cinder blocks, like legit cinder blocks, a syringe in the mouth, and just also people getting lit on fire and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. I mean, it has been something. And Phil, I didn't get to talk to you last week, but what was your reaction when you saw that going on in that Swerve Hangman match with, of course, it was unsanctioned, but still, it was a lot, man.
I mean, Am I shocked they did it? Absolutely not. I mean, it feels like it's in the cadence of what AEW has been doing for some of their big matches. And knowing both those guys, it was like, this is right up their alley. So none of this shocked me. I think it shocked people who are questioning, like, does this belong in the overall scheme of things in wrestling? And people are forgetting, like, this isn't like, oh, they just had this match and decided to do it. Like, there's a storyline, there's a history, there's this whole connected thing. It isn't like a one-off thing. So even in a mainstream audience, for some of the feedback that's been given, it's like, wait a minute, these guys have been rivals now for a hot minute. This is a revitalization of a new program. Like, so, or things reaching this.
We're glitching on Phil a little bit there, so I'm sure we'll get Phil back on here in a little bit here. But there we go. Phil's back. Sorry, Phil, you kind of glitched on us there a little bit, buddy.
I don't know what's going on. I'm seeing you all glitch on my side too, so there might be a weird issue with my connection.
Oh, all right. Well, if you want to reconnect, maybe, or try something real fast.
Let's try that.
Let's try it. So we'll get Phil back on there. But John, when you are a fan of Game Changer Wrestling, you expect those kind of things to happen. I mean, it's a very violent promotion. You're doing death matches all over the place. So that's something that in GCW, for people that don't know, that's what they made their name on. And you're drawing a good 1,000+ people to these shows every time they do them. Brett Laurie has been very successful with this promotion, building it up. And, so you're not, when you see this kind of stuff happening, you're like, that's whatever, do something tough, man. I mean, what did you think when you started hearing about, and saw what happened at All Out as a GCW fan?
Okay. I'm not used to being the one for muting and unmuting. My apologies there.
Yeah, I'll handle it. We gotta keep that muted or it echoes on the live stream. So.
Oh, okay.
But we hear you. You're good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm so used to StreamYard, but I'm not used to someone else taking all the controls. So this is beautiful. I'm just going to sit here and talk. The first thing I thought about when I saw AEW's All Out was that of the 20 participants on the card, 15 of them were GCW people in the last 5 years. So I would say that some of that independent influence can very easily carry over into the mainstream pro wrestling market. I'm trying to think of the best way to put this here. Claudio, Pac, Okada, Mercedes Moné, and Hikaru Shida were the only 5 on that all-out card that hadn't had time in GCW. This is a weird subject because AEW is very mainstream. We have a lot of people watching. It's a very wide variety of people watching. And I was kind of curious who the agent was that let those two put together that match there. And I don't know. This is a very broad subject, but independent wrestling, I know everybody who's going to those shows knows exactly what they're getting into, especially with GCW. AEW, I felt like some of this may have been a surprise to the fans. And I believe that's what some of this talk had come about from, was that people going, wait a minute, I don't know if I've seen a suffocation spot, and on mainstream TV, if at all, if not in a long time. And this is mostly independent stuff, and I was really surprised that it bled through. I was very surprised that it was allowed to bleed through. I love the violence aspect of everything. I love deathmatch, but I will say I feel like, and this may be unpopular to some of the hardcore fans, I feel like maybe some of that shouldn't be on TV, only because there are a lot of kids watching. I know that sounds terrible, but I made a list here: suffocation with bags, drinking blood, the use of needles. It's on the independent scene, but the use of darts, gusset plates, knife boards, and any other obscure items, I don't feel maybe that should be on mainstream. It's really easy for a kid to just put a bag over another kid's head playing wrestling. We all were wrestling fans as kids. We know that can sometimes happen. Again, there's a place for everything, and I'm not an adult to tell other adults what to do. They're making more money than me by far. but I came here today to try to give my stamp a little bit on it. And yeah, my first point, 15 out of 20 performers came from GCW in one aspect or another in the last 5 years. So they've all had that taste. And I was just very surprised. I'll just wrap it up right there. I was extremely surprised that a lot of that went on, especially with the fans not knowing it's coming.
Yeah,
I think
Phil,
that's the biggest thing.
Phil, you're one of the experts, I think, in the industry on what's happening on the indie circuit. How commonplace are spots like that being done on the indies? Would you say it's a little bit, or guys trying to do too much to all over the place to get noticed? I mean, let me hear you on that.
A lot of the last two things of what you just said. So it's not that it's prevalent and it's everywhere, but it is becoming there. You're seeing more and more of it. And it's sort of what you just said. Well, if I do this might give me the opportunity for exposure to get more places. So I'll put myself at risk here. So therefore I'll get something else in the end, like a higher payday over here. But what's happening is there is an art to all styles of wrestling, whether it's technical, whether it's death matches, and not everybody is great at every style of wrestling. And so when you literally the phrase you just said, people throwing things together, my brain went, unfortunately, that's what some people think deathmatch wrestling is. And it's not. And it shouldn't be that, especially because of the danger component when you're talking about things that can really maim and hurt somebody. Even people who are knowledgeable and experienced have had tremendously bad injuries doing what they thought was right and safe. So this isn't anything that happens that incorporates aspects of deathmatch wrestling shouldn't be taken lightly, and shouldn't be taken as a one-off. And I'm sorry if you're but I'm going to get the same kind of hate you're worried about, John. I'm worried about on this end. I'm sorry if you're in front of a crowd of 8 people and you think this is what you're going to need to get your exposure to get over to the next place. I would question that decision and really think about, do you have the knowledge to know what you're doing, or are you just imitating what you think you've seen?
One thing that I was thinking when I was watching all that go down, with the spot with Danielson and then what happened to Swerve and the Hangman, was, can I be enjoying this? It wasn't a matter to me of, okay, it was, great matches, everything going on, but I'm watching this and I'm like, should this be fun to me? Not is it, but should it be? It's like it's like a guilty pleasure almost. I'm sure, and John's smiling because that's what GCW is all about. For the most part, that I'm going to go and watch some people do some really bad things to each other, but I'm smiling while I do it. John, is that just kind of the mentality that the gang at GCW has, and you as a fan have when you're watching all this happen?
Collectively, GCW fandom is also its own hive mind. And it's very interesting the way we do things over there. It doesn't matter what you look like sometimes. It's more about personality. I do know that for sure. Over there, everybody is their own performer. Outside of, I think, one, there are no other performers that are under contract. So everything is figured out by independent wrestler to independent wrestler. Obviously, if there's any type of spot that might be a little, they will go directly to ownership and make sure that Brett is okay with that ahead of time. And the one thing that I think I'll go back to here is everybody knows what they're getting into at GCW. You
right.
know exactly. And there was a shock factor I think AEW was trying to pull off there, and I believe they did that, or we wouldn't be talking about it now. So,
it's fascinating when you think about it. What give it as a GCW person, just to kind of put this on. Let's say we're making a little violence scale here.
Yes.
Of here's a fluff WWE match for 6 minutes, and here's at the other end GCW match of doom. I mean, what is some of the? I mean, not to get too graphic on air, but what are some of the nastiest things that you've seen done in GCW? Just to give people an idea if they don't follow it.
Absolutely. Again, I would say more it comes on to the performer, but you will see these at GCW. I've seen a gentleman out of England. He loves to do dart spots. He knows a specific spot in the back that's kind of a safe place, and he'll have the guy sit there with darts, throw darts. I don't like the spot. I get a little about stuff like that, but it's there for people who do enjoy it. It's just like going to the market, half of the dairy section I don't like. So I just kind of pass on that. But, if I'm getting that brand of, let's just say, I'm a kid, string cheese, I know exactly what I'm getting beforehand. If I buy the package and then come home and it's completely different or another brand, it's kind of a surprise. Gusset plates is another one that I don't know how many times I've seen those in the mainstream yet, but it seems like that may be something down the road that may come in if AEW talent chooses to. Let's see, barbed wire boards. Over in the mainstream, you'll see more tables being broken. On independent scenes, you'll see more doors being broken. I'm a big fan of doors over tables because tables have metal. A lot of metal that can stick out. I've seen plenty of performers also cut themselves on that metal rim that's on the table there. Off the top of my head, we'll just go with that right there. AEW did some fun things. GCW, you know what you're getting ahead of time. Even if you have kids, you know ahead of time what you're getting when you go there. Some love that, some don't so much. I'm not what I would consider a sick individual, maybe slightly off, but
yeah, I'll agree with that.
I do enjoy. Love you too. I do enjoy a decent amount of violence because I know it's so controlled, even down to the light tubes. You figure in wrestling, just this year alone, we're talking hundreds, possibly 100,000. Let's just say 80,000 light tubes have been busted. If you didn't know what you were doing, there would be so many major injuries. And I do feel like deathmatch wrestling as a whole has definitely, by the numbers, skirted around some major injuries. There should be a lot more, especially on the independent and the local scene, where some are just getting their footing and cutting their teeth, so to speak, in the deathmatch scene.
Unintended.
Yeah. But, I've seen a lot of insane stuff. But again, these are people who they know what they're getting into ahead of time. They're paid accordingly to what they agree upon. This is this is what they do for a living. And, it's just you're going to McDonald's. You're going to get exactly what you ordered there. But AEW pulled a McDonald's / Burger King on us. Fat guy terms.
Phil, what'd you think of that?
There's so many things in my brain that are like trying to unpack all of this. I'm friends with Ref Keener, who was a ref in ECW days, and he's like Steve Corino's best friend. And he very openly talks about the day in ECW when it was like, oh, you're going to have a moment where you're going to there's going to be blood involved tonight. You're getting a four-figured amount for your payday today. And wrestlers now who are taking much more extravagant risks are doing it for sometimes, well, this is your opportunity, buddy. It's like, what is happening? And so there's an element of the watered downness that sometimes happens in wrestling where wrestler goes to place A and place A doesn't want them, so they go to place B, or they start place B because they couldn't get into A, and then it just happens. The cycle just keeps happening, and sometimes we water down the product too much. And so then people try to go, let me do more extravagant, crazy things, and to increase this level. One of the things that freaked me out in pro wrestling, watching it, I didn't have the reaction that I had when I watched in the back this being taken out of when I saw somebody take a Kenzin. So it's like, imagine this little silver metal disc that has a whole bunch of metal spikes on it, and watching it, and then it got stuck in this person's head when they took it. I'm watching it going, okay, impact in the match, I get it. And then in the back, for context of what I'm about to say, my mother was an obstetrics nurse. I would walk in sometimes visiting her while she was working. Hear people in labor, very significant pain. And I heard this being removed from somebody and never heard pain like I've heard before with that. And so it put it into a different kind of context for me that first time I ever got to see that happen. Knowing it's painful, of course, but then just the amount that person goes through. And of course, other injuries happen too. But the escalation trade-off, is it AEW is a different kind of thing. It's the number 2 company in the United States. So certainly there's already a level of exposure. The impetus was on, let's show the violence that these two are willing to go to whatever lengths it'll take to end their feud and their rivalry, to level course, whatever it is. I'm concerned about that replication that you see down the path with within wrestling, but it's also like John said, it's based on the audience. Like, does your audience know what they're coming to expect? Do they know that's what they're going to get? I'm not, being from not the Vegas area, I am not the biggest fan of like some sports commissions at times, but those who do regulate it, it's like, okay, maybe there's some reasons why some things need to be more regulated.
Right.
They took a risk, and AEW is known for taking different kinds of risks. I mean, even when yes, bad timing, when Nick Gage and Chris Jericho had their match and there was the pizza cutter moment and there was an advertisement for Domino's and they lost Domino's.
Still an all-time classic.
I mean, yeah. And that, but I say that, and I'm not trying to make fun of the moments in my head, because they didn't change course. They didn't go, whoops, oh, we offended a sponsor, let's do what we can to backtrack and kowtow and change the way we want to do some things. They've gone sort of the other way. Like, okay, it's made people talk. It's made people pay some attention to the number 2 company in wrestling in the United States. So like, I'm adding that because it's, again, this isn't a crowd of people that are in front of 10 people doing this. This is a nationwide audience. But I do feel like, okay, then where's the balance? WWE in the day, when Raw would go past 10, you would see an uptake in some of the things that they were doing, not to the deathmatch level, but the reason they were doing it at 10 was because after 10 o'clock, more kids are asleep.
Right.
Now, of course, there's some fallacy in some of that logic too, because, at what age are they really going to sleep and not just turning on the TV that's in their bedroom or now on a device? So there is a little bit of a transition now between, well, what is appropriate for an audience, an all ages audience, a mainstream audience? Does that change with time? What are they doing? And so I'm cautious. I'm not shy from it, but again, it's the audience. Like, does the audience know what they're going to get, what they're going to get into? And being shocking it shouldn't be a shock, but at the same time, like, then where's the course? And that's, Mark, you and I have had this conversation more with AEW about, like, okay, so what is next? Where are you driving this? Was this just for this big moment and that's it? Or is there what's the next page? Like, where are you turning to next to keep driving this? Is it, because if it's escalation of more of the same, well, where does that go?
Right.
And I'm sure John and I could probably tell you some stories of places where deathmatch wrestling has gone horribly wrong with people who don't know what they're doing, who thought, like, I will do very violent things to myself and, oh, that'll get me the exposure. That'll get me this opportunity. And it doesn't.
No.
It really doesn't pay off. And like John said, there are people who have gotten very injured on things that, this is commonplace. I'll take a light tube and then have to go to the hospital because a shard did damage to them and they had to get surgery. So, there's, again, I'm trying to be very mindful of the audience that's listening now to like what I'm saying.
It's all good. Well, I tell you what, let's pause it there because we do have to get our break in here real quick. But having a great time here with John Wolfe from Game Changer Weekly and Phil Stamper, of course, one of our regulars on our show. We love Phil to death, even though everybody else hates him. We take care of him.
Everybody loves Phil.
That is a bold-faced lie, sir. You know it. Stick around, everybody. We've got a whole lot more on the Mark Hoke Show. Thanks for being with us. We really do appreciate it here on KDAWN 101.5 FM, the Talk of Las Vegas, the best in pro wrestling news and entertainment. We'll keep it rolling when we come back. Hold on, everybody.
Looking for high-quality custom screen printing in Las Vegas? Look no further than Off-Grid Creations. Need a few custom t-shirts for a local event, band merchandise, or family reunion? We've got you covered. Large order of uniforms for your staff, sports team, or club? We can handle that too. Our experienced team will work closely with you throughout the entire process from design consultation to final product. Call us at 661-300-1115. That's 661-300-1115 or visit our website at off-gridcreations.com. Get a free consultation today.
1015 FM KDAWN. This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Here again, your host, Mark Hoke.
And we are back on the Mark Hoke Show here on KDAWN 1015 FM, the talk of Las Vegas, talking pro wrestling and having a great time with John Wolfe from Game Changer Weekly. Based right out here in Las Vegas. He's got the official fan podcast for GCW.
That's right.
Oh, he's a scary individual.
Yeah. Better watch out.
And Phil Stamper also joined us here too. Yeah, we're having a great. Yeah, I haven't seen John for a while, so I'm being somewhat merciless on him, but that's the way GCW is. There's no mercy in there. So, continuing our discussion about violence in pro wrestling. And I think it's funny just the way we've been talking. I feel like we're doing a tap dance a little bit. You know what I mean? This is such a fine line when you're doing things that involve color, foreign objects, stuff like that in pro wrestling, that it has to, number one, it's got to fit your audience and it's got to fit your story. So, those are important things. And I think sometimes that you guys have probably seen out there that people are just doing stuff to do stuff, and that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Swerve, when Strickland was catching criticism for what they did in that match, he said, "This is an unsanctioned match. What'd you expect?" Got it. Good point. At the same time, John, you were talking about your audience. GCW's audience.
Yes.
They're ready for that. When you walk in the door, you don't know what you're going to get. There may be a donkey kicking somebody in the face or an anvil getting bounced off somebody's head or something like that.
Sometimes two donkeys.
Yeah. But with AEW, you're not expecting that. But Phil, you brought this up. Should we now be expecting that from AEW? I don't want to call it like an ECW light thing, but right now they seem to be in a when they're doing a lot of this stuff, they're putting themselves in a position where they're in between WWE and a GCW, ECW type of promotion. And it makes things, I think it makes things a little bit difficult for families, for example. Can you bring your kid who's 10 years old to an AEW show? Is it safe for them in terms, as a parent? Because maybe, you can talk to your kids ahead of time if and say, hey, just so you may see something like this happen. So just be ready. Just realize, these guys are they're pros, and you explain to them as best you can. But then at the same time, it's still, if even though taking a syringe in the mouth, that's still a pretty graphic image. So it's a weird place that AEW is kind of putting themselves in right now. And I'm just wondering, are they going to, after what all the backlash they took, but they got praise too, are they going to lean into it, or are they going to back off of it? What do you think, Phil?
So, I feel like Tony Khan is a very top of mind kind of person. Like, never met the man, never talked to him. So this is a total perception where I'm going in with this idea. This is what we're doing. So if he has the idea of, we did it, let's step away from it. So in 6 months, we'll come back to it again and do it again. So that way there are these moments that you then have. I feel like, though, I really liked what we did, and look at the talk it got. Okay, next week we're going to do this.
Yeah.
I feel he has a little bit more of that sometimes, and I feel like he needs to pace it, because I feel like, and this is an unfortunate other side of some things in deathmatch wrestling, I think sometimes when you give it too much, then it starts to lose its effect. It loses its impact as much. So I think it needs to be spaced out. But they haven't. let me rephrase that. They have spaced it out. They have not gone to the place where it's like every single week it's this huge escalation of stuff, because they wouldn't have been able to continue going even the way they are if they did that every single week. I'm concerned about, where do they go next? But at the same time, all right, they need a breathing point. They need some breath. Now we'll get over to here. Gone is the day when it was, the WWE. Hey, kids, don't try this at home, and then you're going in your backyard to go wrestle.
Yeah.
Those statements are gone. We're not. There's no parent well, maybe there is still a parent television council, and I'm not hearing from them anymore.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, John. Yeah, the same thing. Do you feel like, like an AEW is not just going in a direction towards you guys, but as a GCW guy, does it bother you a little bit that AEW is doing these things?
No.
I mean, this is your house, man. This is your house.
None whatsoever. Like I said earlier, the influence of GCW is all the way at the top there. The last pay-per-view, 15 out of 20 were GCW people in the last 5 years. GCW, with or without trying, has ushered in what seems like the new ECW era. We're almost seeing 1996 to 1998 all over again, including the implementation of a rougher style of wrestling on mainstream media. I don't know if this was meant to do on purpose or not, but of course, there's a lot of enthusiasm down at that GCW level, and it's coming upward as the talent rises. That's why it's so much fun to watch over there, because all you have to do is snap your fingers. One of them's going to be on TV. It's just a matter of who and when. So at one time, ECW was also on the cutting edge of deathmatch wrestling. We had the barbed wire match. They had flaming this, barbed wire this, everything covered. That wasn't seen in WCW. That wasn't seen in WWF. And if it was so rare. It was that rarity. I see Phil. I know exactly what you're talking about, Phil. It was just so rare. And even GCW
bad.
Yeah.
Like, I think of the WCW attempts at, here's hardcore hack, and the brightest silver barbed wire I've ever seen in my life. Like, I don't know why that image is staying in my brain of the cleanest, brightest barbed wire. It didn't work either. It wasn't. It was the wrong mashup.
There's a vibe. And there's a vibe to it, and you can tell the difference between someone just wanting to get cut to say that they've went hardcore versus someone whose forehead is sliced up. They've had quite a few bad nights in their life. The shower hurts when they get in every night. There's just a feel, and you can I don't know, GCW fans especially, because the live event is so intimate. I think that's where we can tell who really likes to do it. And we can tell who's just doing it because they wanted to. We get people that come over to GCW just to say they've done it now. So we really are seeing time more or less spiral than we are in a line. We're seeing the independent scene grow again. GCW's been featuring a lot of lucha, a lot of hardcore. That's primarily what we'd see back in ECW back in the day. Now, we are seeing a greater focus in GCW now on sports entertainment, interestingly enough. We've seen death matches back off quite a bit, and maybe won a show, sometimes maybe less. But won a show, I feel, would be the right way to do it, because it's always someone's first show. Doesn't matter who it is. That movement, though, is because, there's a very, okay, we'll talk deep now. A lot of people feel in deathmatch wrestling, there's been a bubble. It was very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s, because it came over from Japan in the early 90s. There was even a little in the late 80s. It was very popular for a small amount of time. A lot of those men have aged out, and now there's these newer generations that have come up. Every generation has had less and less in the talent pool, so to speak, in deathmatch wrestling, to a point to where I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone, but I would say a lot of deathmatch wrestling now has to go outside of the United States to find some incredible talent to come in. Whereas there used to be tons of people who they could maybe wrestle, that they could take a gusset or they could take a 2x4 to the head and they were amazing. Now there's been a greater focus on storylines. There's been a greater focus on wrestling that wasn't there before. And that was because initially deathmatch was looked at as kind of cheaper. by some people's standards because they're not wrestling, they're just hitting each other with stuff. That's not the case anymore. Now we have full-on matches that have the death match element implemented. So it's sometimes not always weapons first anymore, and when it is, we know it's coming. We definitely know it's coming. So yeah, we're seeing a revival here, and people that are in my age group in their 40s, 50s, maybe in some in the late 30s would know that this has happened before. And I'm going to be curious to see if WWE follows suit at some point, decides they might want to try one or two matches. But again, I'll just go to this real quick. AEW. I'm talking your ear off. That's my thing. AEW. I feel like the back-end sales of the pay-per-view and the fan revenue will tell AEW what to do with this new deathmatch element that comes in. And, money talks, and that's what the business is about.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we got to get another break in. And this is a fascinating discussion. It really is. Talking about the violence in pro wrestling, death matches, GCW, and what everybody's doing right now. I do have to remind everybody that if you feel like trying to make a little money off of all this crazy pro wrestling stuff, you have a chance to do it. Go to betonline.ag. Actually, go to my website first, markhokeshow.com. Sign up. Got you a nice bonus there, 50% sign-up bonus up to $1,000, and you can bet on pro wrestling. That's right, kids. You can bet on it.
Ooh.
And if you listen to me, I probably would have made some people some money over the past couple of events. So you might want to check that out. Once again, this website's betonline.ag. Just go to markhokeshow.com and click on that link so you can get that bonus. Code is BOL1000. All right, we're going to step back, take another break, and we're going to keep this rolling. Phil Stamper and John Wolfe from Game Changer Weekly. Man, this is fun. It is a very interesting topic, and we were talking about this at Wrestle Connects with some of the veterans, too, and I'm going to throw that input in when we come back. So stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
.1015 FM KDAWN. You're listening to the #1 professional wrestling radio show in Vegas, The Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Now, here again is Mark Hoke.
And we are back for the final segment of hour #1 of The Mark Hoke Show. But don't fret. It's just the final segment of hour 1. There's still another one to go. Because, 1 hour is not enough for this stuff, man. We love pro wrestling. We're having a terrific time here. We've got John Wolfe from Game Changer Weekly and Phil Stamper joining us here. The president of wrestling. I salute you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See, I can be a
I was like, where's this going? I was waiting for it. Feeling it come.
That's all. Yeah. Oh my God. Sometimes I go places and then I just find myself in a ditch, but it's all good. Anyway, so we're talking about violence in pro wrestling and all the, how it's been really brought up to the forefront after what happened at AEW All Out. And, I think you guys had a great point at the, right before we were wrapping the segment up about the business is going to dictate whether what AEW, for example, did is going to be good for business or bad for business. That's the bottom line here. With GCW, GCW knows they have a niche audience. They're not going to go and try and sell a stadium out or anything like that. There's a certain audience that is going to go watch that. And I think that's where it's going to be interesting for AEW to see where this all turns out if they decide to keep going in this direction. Now, they did an okay rating last week. They pulled a 2.21 rating, so they had about 716,000 watching on the show. So, not a bad number. Of course, there's probably some other factors, like John Moxley turned on Bryan Danielson. You're catching everything up and, following the pay-per-view, so we'll see where it goes. But, it was interesting that I was talking to some of the more veteran guys about what happened and, And honestly, it was weird. It was kind of sometimes the same reaction. Some said that was garbage. Should have never done it. It was terrible. But some are kind of like, kind of like me, where it's like, I didn't like the graphic images, but still, I get what they were trying to do. And that's really the bottom line on all this is, to me, is, one, are people going to watch it? And two, does it make sense if you do it? And John, I'm sure in GCW, like I said, you've seen people doing things just to do them, and it, and what's the point? There's got to be a reason. And, I've always said that with, like the Magnum TA Tully Blanchard match way back when, the I Quit match, which is still to me one of the greatest matches I've ever seen in my life. But there was, you take that match as just a match, and like these two guys beat each other up, but there was a, months and months build of hatred between the two. So what happened made sense. So, John, with GCW, and it's funny you said they're actually talking about backing off a little bit.
Yes.
How good has GCW been at using that violence in a proper manner, do you think?
Most people would go, okay, independent wrestling, GCW, we're going straight to deathmatch. There's quite a few companies that put on death matches more than GCW. You have quite a few out there that is their focus. And GCW is now in a place where they're looking at sports entertainment just a touch more. Matt Cardona really helped them usher that in. It's just a matter of who wants what. It's a very interactive show at GCW. When you talk about everything has to have a reason on independent wrestling, not always. Unfortunately, they may find a road cone in the back, and guess what? We got a road cone now in the match somewhere. But also at the same time, there's a nice little story where there is the Briscoe gentleman who passed away. I can't remember which one, and I'm so sorry. Jay had a bandana on, and he gave it to one of the gentlemen at GCW, and he just always kept it with him. And sometimes you'll see a wrestler come out with it on, and that's a little homage to him. So not everything does. There's sometimes just not storylines in independent wrestling. And the reason for that sometimes is you have wrestlers that can't make every show. As independents, they may be working in Canada the next weekend when we're hoping that, hey, what happened to Mary in that storyline? Bobby isn't there to tell Mary what he's thinking because Bobby's in Canada right now. So storylines are much more loosely based. When we do get one, GCW really throws their whole behind it. We just recently had one where it ran for over 6 months, and it was just a beautiful story. And,
so there you go.
And I really do believe that, they're putting some pieces together. A lot of Cardona was one of them, but we had JBL just recently came down. Kurt Angle and Mick Foley will be on one of the shows here in a couple weeks. So it's starting to go through the locker room now, just like ECW was, where GCW is a nice place to come down and at least get one show in. And like I was saying, fan hive mind, some wrestlers like to come down just to get the fan experience because we throw our whole, again, behind into the show. We're screaming and yelling front row every time. Beers are flying. I've had my chair completely broken in front of me. I've had wrestlers in my laps. You have to know what you're coming for. But once you do, man, it's wild. And that's what I look forward to. So, death matches, maybe one, maybe two a show. I know when they're coming back to Las Vegas, they're going to be putting everything in. It's been 2 years since they've been here.
We got about a minute to go, and John, I want to give you like 30 seconds on this answer real quick.
Oh, that's bad.
It has been a place where people have gone to revitalize their careers.
Yes.
It's been fascinating. You look at Matt Cardona, who turned himself completely around. Why is everybody coming to GCW to do it?
We're more than capable of allowing someone to do something without interrupting our storylines. There's no story. It's very few storylines except for maybe personal ones between a performer here and there. JBL came down. He walked in the ring behind a wrestler's back, Effie, one of the wrestlers there, very well-known wrestler there, and just delivered a couple lariats, took him out, walked out of the ring and left. And you know what? Cool. I'll take that. I'll take whoever wants to come over, show their face, have a good time. There are wrestlers now that are saying they just want to do GCW once. And we're starting to see people who leave WWE, AEW. They're coming over and at least getting a shot or two in with us because the independent fans at GCW are really good at giving wrestlers a nice shot in the arm.
Real quick, before we wrap it up, where can we find you and where can people hear your podcast?
At Game Changer Week on Twitter, you can find me there. Our podcast is across the Body Slam Network. We're on all platforms that you can find us on, Twitter, Body Slam, you name it. I fill time like crazy. I love you all.
You are the man, John.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, so make sure you check that out. Even if you're not a GCW fan, maybe become one by listening to John's show.
We're a group, man. It's a group.
That you are. But I promise you, I'll get to a GCW show sometime soon. So
see you in April.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody for sticking around for hour number 1. Phil and I will be back for hour number 2, so you get more Phil Stamper, which is always a good thing. But Mark Hoke Show return hour 2 here on KDAWN 101.5 FM, the talk of Las Vegas, and streaming out there on YouTube. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Want more of The Mark Hoke Show? Follow us on Twitter at Mark Hoke Show, like us on Facebook at The Mark Hoke Show, and visit markhokeshow.com to keep up with everything happening with the show. And remember to check out all of our archive shows on YouTube at The Mark Hoke Show and download our podcasts at markhokeshow.podbean.com and all your favorite podcast outlets. So join The Mark Hoke Show family today, and thanks for listening.